Hey everybody, I'm back. But, as I was saying at the end of the first video, you have these you have the Big East Conference rising from the ashes like the phoenix, and by doing it, in some may say the most talked about, if not controversial, if not positive ways. I mean, you technically have the Big East opening its arms, doing arms wide open for these teams like SMU and Boise State and Houston and San Diego State and UCF and South Florida, and like UCF as well. You got them opening the arms wide open for these teams. But as much as they have risen from the ashes like the phoenix, they too are not completely risen. Or I should basically say, they're not completely out of the waters yet. Because anybody that may have heard about this, if you haven't, here's the news. 6 days ago or so, and it's being talked about even to this day, it's been announced that Rutgers, a team that's going to be in the Big East Division, is leaving the Big East probably after that inaugural season of the Big East Conference Championship in football. In that inaugural Big East season for teams like Boise State, San Diego State, and Houston and SMU and all of them, Rutgers, in the inaugural season of the East Division, in the East Division's inaugural season in the Big East Conference, is going to be leaving possibly after that inaugural season and going to the Big Ten. Now, we're not totally sure if it is going to follow after this upcoming season for 2014, if they're going to be in 2014 part of the Big Ten, or is it going to be a year after? We're not sure, but it has been announced that Rutgers is leaving. So what does that do for the Big East? Well, one season won't really hurt them. They'll still be able to do the conference championships and everything, so it won't really hurt them. But to make up for it, word is that Navy, that's right now is an independent team in football, and part of the Patriot League and other sports like basketball. Navy is going to end up joining the Big East in the next 2 to 3 years. Maybe even sooner with Rutgers leaving. So with Rutgers leaving, they would still have Navy. But again, it's all about the reason Rutgers is going to stay and then leave and Navy's going to come in. It's all about exposure and expanding into the markets and exposing those markets to the whole country, just for everybody to see exactly what else is out there. And probably give potentially other teams and conferences, things to think about. I mean, the Big East, the ACC, I should say, not the Big East, but the ACC, along with some other major conferences in the East, if not in the Midwest, have been pursuing Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame, who's going to be playing for the national championship this year, is currently an independent school when it comes to football, but our Big East going to be ACC. But the Big East and soon to be ACC team in other sports. So you can understand why other teams would want to, latch on and try to grab Notre Dame and bring Notre Dame's football program into that same conference that the other sports are in. But you see, there's a problem though that lies within that. As great as it would be for, like, say, the ACC to fully integrate Notre Dame into the conference along with the football program, they can't, because Notre Dame has a deal with NBC. Its deal with NBC allows NBC to broadcast Notre Dame homeschool games. That's right, the deal with NBC is that all the home games will be broadcast on their network for all the country to see. Well, the away games are more likely to be played and seen on other networks like CBS, ESPN, ABC. So that's the only part of the deal that the ACC could latch on to. But they can't, because of that deal where NBC could broadcast the home games of Notre Dame. Now, the only way the ACC could fully integrate all sports programs along with football, that includes football, is to try to work something out with NBC to where NBC could still broadcast them, but it'd be the ACC. I think that would be the only thing. I think the ACC, if they want Notre Dame, is going to have to make a deal to where NBC would have full rights over broadcasting everything ACC sport related. In other words, ESPN would have to give up the ACC to NBC for it to happen. But until that happens, Notre Dame is going to be the only independent. Notre Dame is going to, so far right now, be the only independent, as far as I see it, the only independent football school or school whose football program will remain in the independence, while other schools like Navy, BYU, and possibly Army will probably integrate elsewhere. Notre Dame will remain the only independent school. No matter what other schools get added on in the place of those that might leave. But you see, the reason for that is because Notre Dame's already getting a lot of exposure. So they basically feel they don't need to leave. The football program's getting a lot of exposure. But you see, the thing is, though, but you see the difference with Notre Dame and the teams going to the Big East, as well as Rutgers remaining with the Big East just for one more season in the inaugural season of its East Division and then moving on, is about exposure. Rutgers, let's be honest, is not being shown that much. If they go to the Big Ten, you got the Big Ten network. You got an actual cable network of the Big Ten that would broadcast Rutgers games. That is why Rutgers wants to make that move. That's why Maryland wants to make that move. But again, that's what this conference alignment situation is all about. It's about exposure. It's about exposure for the schools, so that those in high school can have the interest is piqued, and not just at a school that's local for them, that's a local choice, but also for a school that has more to offer. And that's what it is. That's mainly what it is. But again, sometimes a conference alignment is always going to be under controversy. In my opinion, conference alignments will always be mired in controversy. Why? Because of the geographic nature of the teams going into said conferences. You take a look at the mid-major conferences, like say the Mountain West. The Mountain West is going to be adding a lot of WAC teams, or several WAC teams next year. Like San Jose State's going to be added, finally, and a few others. So you got those teams being added in the place of those that are leaving. And now some people might say, well, geographically, San Jose State doesn't really make sense. Well, hello, does Fresno State make sense being in the Mountain West? Not really, but they're there. Does Nevada? Sort of, but not really, but they're there. It's all about the fact, it's all about exposure. It's all about exposure. Now, some might say that San Diego State, that the Big East should make a deal with the Big 12. Honestly, I'm pretty sure people have talked about it, and have San Diego State go to the Pac-12 in place of taking a team like, say, Colorado or Utah in its place. But that's not going to happen. And yes, it would make more sense, but again, it's about exposure. It's about national exposure. You take a look at some of your Comcast channels, your Comcast sports channels, and they are basically part of the Big East network. That's how the Big East gets exposure, so San Diego State would get a lot of exposure. Again, geographically it may not make sense, and geographically it may be a very controversial move, but it's about exposure and it's about money. That's all it is. It's all it is. The same with Missouri. Some will say geographically Missouri doesn't belong to the SEC. It's about exposure and it's about money. You know, and the same with West Virginia and the Big 12. It may not make sense, but it's about exposure, it's about money. That's about it. And yes, reality will hit these schools, will hit the sports programs like mainly football, and make them realize, you know what, this is not going to, and make them realize, wow, for a football team, this isn't going to be as easy as we thought. And that is why sometimes it's a modern controversy. And that's why sometimes people like me, like I said in another video, feel that teams like Colorado and Missouri may end up going back to the Big 12 in the near future. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But as far as the Big East goes, the new conference alignment for next year, the inaugural season of having two divisions in the conference, yeah, from a positive standpoint, it gives teams like Boise, San Diego State, SMU, and Houston a chance, and UCF, a chance to finally compete for BCS, yes, or compete for one of the major bowls. But here's the thing about here's the thing that goes along with the controversy part. They're not going to be alone. Because even though it's the inaugural season and they have a better chance, they're not going to be alone because you're going to have other mid-major conferences behind them. You're going to have several major mid-conferences behind them finally getting that shot as well. Because according to the news sources, whoever has the highest rank out of any of those conferences is going to get a shot. That's right, they're going to get a shot to go into those major bowls. So let's say you could have, in the inaugural season, you could have a team like, say, Boise State win it all in the Big East, win the entire Big East Conference, the division and the championship. You can have them play against a team like, say, San Jose State, who right now is ranked 25 in the top 25. You can have them play San Jose State. Let's say San Jose State in the inaugural season in the Mountain West wins it all. They get a high ranking. You could have San Jose State and Boise State in one of the bowl games. One of the bowl games that's not part of the playoff system at that moment or that time, at that moment. You can have them playing in that bowl game. It's true. Because let's say, the Fiesta Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, is tied up. Or the Rose Bowl, the Orange Bowl is tied up. Any one of those other two bowls could be perfect for them to be in it to get a chance to play for the national title. That's what I'm saying. Even though it's inaugural, it's more beneficial for teams like Boise, San Diego State, Houston, and SMU, and UCF, and Houston. It's also beneficial for a team like San Jose State. See what I'm saying? So basically what I'm trying to point out in this two-part videos, is conference alignment. The conference alignment is a positive thing, but like I say up there, the conference alignments are also admired. The conference alignments, well, basically I asked the question, are conference alignments admired in controversy? Because I look at it geographically that it is, but from a positive standpoint, if it helps give more exposure to these schools and those sports programs, then so be it. But what are your thoughts on it? What are your thoughts about these conference alignments, especially the Big East? Do you think it's a matter of controversy with the way it's being done geographically? What else do you think about these other things that I've mentioned? Let me know down below. Video responses are greatly appreciated, and I'll talk to you all later. But let me know what you guys think.